T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Episode 531. Happy All in the Tree Tuesdays. Justin Julander in the house tonight. Not gonna lie, really stoked. All right, if you know, you know. Justin Julander, top tier in the reptile game. But what's good, everyone? I'm your boy MJ. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Shout out to everyone who went to Daytona. I'm fresh off of Daytona. What a time. Shout out to NARBE for throwing such an awesome show. Shout out to all the Florida people, first and foremost. Florida's different. I'm going to tell you that right now. Florida is beyond different, not only demographically, weather-wise, people. I'm just saying, I've been to quite a few reptile shows. Nothing quite hits like a Daytona, okay? So guess what? I'll be back Daytona for sure. Definitely one of my favorite shows. And if you went to Daytona over the weekend, if I met you, drop a comment. Let me know. And again, shout out to anyone to Daytona. Shout out to the Lost Boys, all the other amazing friends that I have that were able to travel to Daytona. And I met so many great people, man. So shout out to everyone, the early birds. What's good? First and foremost, if this is your first time tapping in, all right, if this is your first time hanging out on a Tuesday night, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. By doing that and selecting all, you'll be reminded of every single podcast dropped out of the Reptile Network 7 days a week. Yes, that's right. We've been 7 days a week now for going on 2 months. All right, and it's going great. A lot of work, but holy shit, 7 days a week. All right, so thank you for all the love and support on all the other segments. If you're watching all the other segments throughout the day of the week, thank you so much, because supporting them just means just as much as you watching anything that I'm on. So, and I know there's a lot of great content out there. You know, Stephen Cush, JMG, Dave Levison, Krista from Norify Exotics, and we have monitors all on Saturdays from Jen and Uncle Mike. So either way, thank you so much for all the love and support. If you're looking for exclusive content, if you want to get more out of what you see out of each episode, or if you want raw cut, unreleased episodes that I have to edit sometimes, then go join the Trap Talk Patreon family, okay? Come connect with me and the family. You can do that by clicking the first link in the description below. And once you join the Trap Talk Patreon family, you get connected to a Discord. Tap in with over 200 amazing reptile keepers. And there's an awesome Instagram group chat to connect with 24/7 as well. Shout out to all the Patreon members. You guys are my heart, man. I love you guys, man. But shout out to Early Birds. Who's here tonight? Who's excited for Justin Julander, okay? Shout out to Nick, the Reptile Pueblo, Trap Talk Patreon member, all day, every day. Simon, Pierre in the building. What is good? I believe he's repping Australia. Love having the Aussie heads in the house. The big homie Lupe, Space City Chondros, Trap Talk Patreon member, all day, every day. The homie Josh, Scalpins and Feathers, who just landed some more Beaded Eggs collaboration. Big things coming. Trap Talk Patreon member. Jen, what's up, Jen? Pleasure meeting you over the weekend. Jen is definitely somebody I was excited to meet this weekend at Daytona. And cool, man. She was just on the show not too long ago. That's what makes everything so awesome. My sis Lily in the building, Trap Talk Patreon member, all day, every day. Homie Ruben in the building. Ruben, will you be at the Mayor's? Answer the question, please. Cannot wait. All right. NARBC Dallas right around the corner. That's the next thing on the agenda. Shout out to Tony, Revision, Reptiles in the building. My boy Tony, thanks for being here. Morph Kings. Homie Cody. Sorry. Cody, Trap Talk Patreon member, all day, every day. Big Mike, 1776 Exotics. I missed you, bro. So bummed I didn't see you at Florida, but I'll catch you on the next one. Because Florida knows that's, you know, I got a lot of my best friends live in Florida, so I'm going back to Florida for sure. It's just hot and humid, man. What's up, player? Thanks for being here, Justin. Appreciate you. The mayor's in the house, of course. Giving love to the chats as always. Eric's Morph Factory, my guy. I actually stayed at an Airbnb with Eric's over the weekend. And if you want to talk about saving the day, I forgot what day it was, but I was definitely hurting from a Daytona night previous. And I was like thinking, wow, man, I wish I was at home to smoke a dab because I didn't want to bring no dabs to Florida. My man, Eric, Morse Factory, was like, MJ, I have dabs in my room, and I fucking couldn't believe it. And I got high, and I was so happy. So listen, thank you to everyone in the chats. If you think that tonight's episode is worth of any super chat, drop a super chat. All right, support US ARC, become a member. Also, we'll get right into that. Let's get into tonight's sponsors. But before we do that, you guys know what the deal is. 100% please support US ARC. Third link in the description below. You click usarc.org, read all about US ARC, see what their purpose is here in the reptile world and why so many people support US ARC, okay? Unfortunately, there's not enough people. We need more people, all right? So please help jump on the team, be a part of the US ARC. Shout out to Phil Goss. They raised over $20K on one item. That's right, at Daytona show. So I forgot who made that bike. It was Steve Morphs and Jeremy Bods. They went half on making this awesome bike, and this will be on the vlog that I put out this weekend, I believe. But they had a bike, a US ARC bike, that went for $20K. I don't know the exact total number that they raised at the Daytona US ARC, but that's so awesome. So shout out to US ARC Florida. Shout out to you if you support US ARC, all right, because that's what it's all about. Very blessed for our proud sponsors of tonight. One of those proud sponsors being my good man, my good friend, of course, GS Reptiles, Gary Scavino, someone who was just at Daytona as well. We had quite the time, and I'm telling you right now, if you missed his vlog that he just put out on what he has available and you're trying to get your hands on a Boelens, this is something you need to go over and check out right now. Type in GS Reptiles on YouTube, subscribe, watch any vlog that this man drops. You will be entertained. And if you can, try to catch him at a show, all right? He doesn't really announce what shows he's going to, but he goes. That's my man, Gary Scavino. Thank you so much, Gary, for your support. Again, GS Reptiles on Instagram and on YouTube. Let them know that Trap sent you. And if, man, definitely hands down one of my favorite tables. I couldn't get enough. And that's, of course, Brian Susan from Susan Reptiles. Okay, he had every species, almost, other than the greens, of tree monitors at his booth. Dude, it was freaking amazing, all right? I mean, I would say the only guy to ever have Boehmei bent, at a booth, right? Who the hell has ever had Boehmei locality tree monitors at their booth? Well, Brian Susan did, and he sold a pair. God knows what that price was, but either way, guys, if you're looking to get into the tree monitors, go through the guy doing it the best right now, and that's Brian Susan at Sundown Reptiles, also in the high-end gecko game. All right, I'm going to be displaying a lot of his products that he had at his table, but so many different species of cool geckos that aren't really worked with. Okay, the Chihuahua game is nonstop over there at the Sundown Reptile facility, and also gargoyle geckos and abronia. I mean, this guy's really like, how many people are really honing down on abronia? You know what I mean? And abronia is one of the coolest lizards you could keep, especially in cool temperatures in your house. But anyway, sundownreptiles.com. You can find the links to my sponsors in the description below. Okay, last but not least, shout out to the David Brahms Reptile Perch Company. Okay, go to reptileperch.com, place your order for a PVC design perch from the OG, David Brahms, the guy who started all this PVC designed reptile perch, as far as being a business, you know what I mean? This guy's the GOAT. He's the best doing it. Also has amazing green tree python availability. All right, he has a major success this year with his clutches. So go check him out, the Reptile Perch on Instagram. Also, go to his website. And he has purchased not only for 3x2x2s, but also for rack systems that you're raising your neonates in. And I know people like the mayor uses David Brahms.
I do. My exclusive perch provider, that's for sure.
Yeah. And you know what? Can't drop Marshall in because he doesn't. I don't want to fucking. I already knew if I would have dropped Marshall in first, he would have been like, I don't use them. And I would have been never. Why the fuck did I do that?
Hey, happy Tuesday, first of all.
Happy Tuesday.
Speaking of Marshall, when I came back from Daytona and I said, God, I'm still recovering from Daytona, I didn't want to have to mean it was from COVID, bro.
Jesus. And how that happened, dude? I stayed in the same room as you, and I just tested. I don't have COVID.
Not yet, at least.
How you feel, buddy? You good?
A little bit better, but I'm good.
Yeah. What are your symptoms? Yeah. Are you
it's like tired and a little tired and achy. I started feeling it this morning and came home and just wanted to go ahead and take it down. I mean, I know it's been going around. We've got a lot of people out at the office with it, and I know that it's surging right now in different areas. Here it is at least. So,
dude, we shared a blunt together. Oh my God. What the fuck? Oh, but and then you were smoking. No, hold on. You and Bill were smoking on a pen all night too on Friday night. You could have got it on like the last night or something too.
Who knows?
Damn.
I feel fine.
Me too.
But I hear Ryan Young is feeling a little under the weather too.
That's because he hasn't had a super ham in 48 hours.
I haven't had it in a couple years, so I was due.
Damn. Well, I hope you feel better. Thanks for making it tonight, as you always do. You're a trooper, Marshall. You don't miss, man. Unless it's like something dedicated to the kids or family, you don't miss. So thanks for being here. It means a lot.
Yeah, man. What are you gonna miss tonight?
Exactly. Okay, guys, because like I said, I'm not trying to like sugarcoat no podcast because we are real people doing a real podcast here. And I got to say, Justin Julander, what do you guys have to say? Let's go with Bill first.
Listen, Justin's a great guy. I haven't seen him in a while. I think we met for the first time out at Northeast Carpet Fest in Philly last year. And we talked a lot. I think that was the first time maybe I met Ryan Young too.
At that pool, right? There's like a pool you guys were hanging out.
Yeah, so you can imagine he and I and Justin hung out, talked a lot, poolside, of course. And Justin's a great guy. We all just kind of seemed to fit in. And I had to tell him about couple of corrections in his book that he needed to make. But other than that, we got that worked out. And so I'm looking forward to talking to him tonight again because I haven't seen him in a while and pimping him about some green tree history.
Did he call somebody a doctor that shouldn't have been a doctor or something? Like what happened? I'm just curious.
That I don't recall.
That was a shot in the dark.
Like much of the rest of the day.
Yeah. And okay, what do you have to say, Marshall?
I've known Justin for a long time. I can't remember when we've met many times. He's the OG. I remember for him from different symposiums, and pretty sure I've met him at shows. But I can't remember if I know I've seen him at Tinley at least once or twice, and maybe at other than that, it might be just like symposiums and talks and stuff. But yeah, man, written a book, obviously very knowledgeable. Curious. I haven't talked to him in a while, so. Curious to see what he's up to these days, what he's keeping, what he's working on. He's got another book coming out. Like what's going on.
Yeah, and I just want to say before I even knew any of the NPR guys. And by the way, I met Eric and Owen, two different people. By the way, for the record, two different people. Owen, awesome fucking guy. Even though I told him to move out of my seat, I felt really bad. Nobody told me that was Owen, but really fucking cool guy. But before I even met any of these guys, when I was just the outsider looking at the NPR network catalog and seeing all their episodes, my favorite one was Fight Club. I liked the thumbnail, and I don't know if they just made Justin look really cool in that thumbnail, but that's how I related myself to Justin right away. But also that's what got me to listen to a lot of their podcasts, and he's my favorite NPR guy. I'm not gonna lie, I can't wait to hear more and actually get to meet him. I haven't even met the guy, and he's already my favorite. So. Let's do it. You guys ready or what?
Yep, let's go. Ready as I'm going to be tonight.
All right. Shout out to everyone in the chats, man. But you guys know the deal. It's that time. Do what you got to do to get your mind right. Do what you got to do to stay hydrated for episode 531. All of the Treat Tuesday. Justin Julander coming at you right now. Let's go.
Good.
You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasts?
Yes.
Man.
Only Trap Talk. Exclusive.
Yes.
Exclusive. Oh.
So stop calling us.
Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the crop, God love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with everybody, we do it. Everybody, we do it. Do it. Do it.
And we're live, episode 531. Justin Julander, what is going on, my man? Welcome.
What's up, guys?
Justin, what's up, man?
How's it going?
How you doing, man?
I'm blushing backstage. You guys are too kind.
Oh, well deserved, my friend.
I don't know about that, but yeah, thanks for having me on.
Well, by the way, we team up, you know, as far as who should bring who on, and I was not in charge of bringing you on. Okay, by the way, and only because I didn't think I was that legendary to do this, but I was able to because Bill wasted fucking I don't know how many times not asking you, Marshall. You never brought him on, so I just Bill. Did I surprise you with this one?
Yeah, but I thought I got him on.
Oh shit!
This was a great snag, regardless of how you trapped him into being here.
Yeah,
it was a good score.
Yeah. Well, listen, but it wasn't no hand me down. Justin did ask, well, what are we going to talk about? You know, usually people would just say, yeah, I'm down. Let's pick a date. But Justin's like, well, what is this going to be about? So respectfully, you know, I had to come and at least sell him a little bit, but he's here. And now you're here. Thanks for being here, Justin.
Oh yeah. No, you guys get a lot of good guests. So I'm humbled to be here. Thanks.
We do. Thank God.
Yeah. But a lot of our guests don't have type of work as far as, you know, publishing books and being involved in literature that actually help people see a lot of different things in this reptile world. And I'm curious how that even came about. Like, how long were you involved with either breeding or keeping before actually putting a lot of what you have experienced in a book?
So you're saying you don't have a lot of nerds on, I guess, huh? I mean, I started keeping reptiles as a kid, of course. You know, my dad was really facilitative in letting me bring home whatever I could find on backpacking trips or whatnot. But really kind of focused keeping and breeding was probably 1997, 98, around there. So, you know, it's been a little while doing this. And then my first book was in 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. So that was kind of the, I guess, time frame. And really, I mean, I don't want anybody to think that I think I'm some expert. You know, these books were, especially the Green Tree book, was mostly like information was not out there in a lot of ways, like scientific publications and things like that were coming out. And most people aren't, you know, cracking journals and reading scientific publications. But I thought there was a lot of information in those scientific publications that pertain especially to potentially to the way we keep them. I'm not saying that we need to replicate their natural history exactly to be successful, especially if somebody's focused on production, but you know, something important to know. I really think it's really critical to understand their natural history, know where they're coming from in order to, you know, keep them the best we can or improve our keeping.
And we're still figuring out more stuff as years go on.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
we're talking like over a decade ago, you were kind of putting a lot of this stuff into thought. And Bill, let's kind of get this out of the way. What did you mean by that when you pulled out the Chondro book and you said you had him fix some things? I don't know if that's just a funny little inside joke. What do you mean by that?
It was completely just a funny joke. Like my wife was there, and so I introduced her to Justin, and I said, Kim, this is Justin. He wrote the book that I had literally just recently purchased, you know, acquired your book, and I'd been reading it, and I guess this is the gentleman that wrote the book I've been reading. And so it was just a funny thing for me to say, like I had to make some corrections, but we got all that worked out. So that's all I meant by that.
No, frankly, I mean, once you write a book, it's out of date as soon as it's, you know, hits the pages. So I'm sure and obviously all the, you know, taxonomic changes that have happened.
Yeah.
Happened after.
Did that happen after the Green Tree book? The classification?
Other than Azuria,
Azuria,
all the uterensis and all the subspecies and things like that. So, you know, but taxonomy, you know,
Ryan Young will say your book is right. You were ahead of your time, and well, perfect. Don't change a thing.
We were I was on a trip up to Northern Australia with Rico and Alan Rapace and a few others. Wow. And yeah, it was a fantastic trip, and I really felt fortunate to be, you know, among those giants and learn from them pretty much the whole time. But we all joked with Rico that he needed to write the correct chondro. So, I guess I shouldn't come out too hot.
Yes. So, I mean, and to kind of go back to, like, I feel like books that really kind of made you kind of go in people's, conversations a lot, it had to be the carpets, right? Like that's kind of was the biggest piece to any kind of book that you've ever put out and gotten a lot of like responses and stuff that people go and buy today as we speak. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
and I'm curious, was it because you were keeping a lot of carpets, or what was it with the carpets?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what originally kind of got me into breeding reptiles, was the carpet pythons. I remember seeing a picture of a Centralian carpet sitting on like a red rock cliff overlooking some gorge in Central Australia, and I thought, I did a lot of backpacking in the desert, and I'm thinking, if I could see a python in the middle of the desert, how cool would that be? This has to be the coolest python on earth. And then getting, into those, in that group, the Morelia, and learning more about carpet pythons. And I mean, they're just such a cool, diverse group. And I just fell in love pretty quick. Started keeping jungle carpets, and then added, other subspecies and species to the list. And then, so it kind of ballooned from there. But yeah, the original carpet book was Nick Mutton and I were kind of chatting about that and saying, is anybody writing a book on carpets? And I think there was an attempt being made at the time, but they'd fallen out, and the two co-authors couldn't make it work. And so we were like, well, let's give it a shot. And so we contacted Bob Ashley, and he's like, yeah, it sounds good. So he supported us. We took a year or two to write it, and then released that in 2010. And then the second edition just came out a couple of years ago. Basically a whole new book. Like I said, there's plenty to change and add new information. And I think one of my favorite things about the second edition was kind of some thinking, regarding taxonomy and kind of where pythons, why they're different in different areas, and why, where the splits occur. Because there's a lot of debate about what's a jungle, what's a coastal, where the diamonds fit in, things like that. And there have been some taxonomic publications that came out, but I had this idea that maybe the drainage basins had something to do, since they're linked to streams and rivers and things like that. And that's kind of how they disperse. They're stuck with trees for the most part. And so I overlaid the water basin map over the taxonomic map, and it fit almost too good to be true kind of thing. Wow. It just overlapped completely. So
did that lead you to connect any more dots between what was going on by laying the maps on top of each other?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, some of the things that showed genetic diversity that people, they're all the same, it's just a carpet python, but this kind of showed maybe that's not the case. Maybe diamond pythons aren't necessarily closely related to coastals and jungles and those kind of things. Maybe they're completely different, and taxonomically maybe that things should change. So we proposed a few changes in the book. Who knows if that'll take off in the scientific community. And Australians are notorious for not liking Americans to mess with their stuff. So who knows? They'll probably ignore it completely. But
Justin, you've written the carpet python book. You've written the green tree python book. I've got to ask, when are you and Gary going to get together and write the Carpondra book?
Perfect. Yeah,
it's gotta be coming up.
It'll be more of a pamphlet, I think.
Brian Young will have a book burning.
Yeah.
No, it's gonna be like, it's one of those dare not to do drug pamphlets from back of the day. Like it's gonna be like in that kind of format. Very simple.
Show an egg in a frying pan and say, "This is your brain on Carpondra."
Yep.
No, but before listen, because I do want to talk about hybrids with you for sure at one point tonight. But the thing is, like, even, but doing so many shows like we do, I feel like there's so much new information out there that people have had success with. And I don't feel like there's enough books kind of being updated with people's experiences, or, even people like Bill Stiegel, who's had back-to-back successful years breeding chondros. Like we talk about the liver parts that he uses and other techniques for assist feeding and whatnot. But it has to be a big thing, right? But like, it's not as easy as saying I'm going to put a book out there. Like I just don't know the whole process behind it. Like I know there's money involved, but like to put a book out, I'd be fucking scared because everyone's a critic first and foremost. And and I'm curious, like, how hard is it to publish a book?
I mean, it's not the simplest thing, and I think that's why you see that not a lot of people. I mean, when we were writing the carpet python book, we heard from 2 or 3 or 4 other people. Oh yeah, I'm writing one too. And even with the green tree book, like nobody, a couple notable people didn't want to share pictures because they were going to use it for their own book. Now it's been what, 10, 15 years since that time, and I haven't seen their book come out. So it's not as easy as saying I'm going to write a book, and it takes a lot of work. Once you get the text written, just lining up photos, getting photos of all the things you need to get. And especially with our books, we wanted to have only wild specimens in the natural history chapters. So that's kind of a challenge, especially when you're talking green tree pythons from Indonesia. That was very difficult. And I don't think I accomplished that in the green tree book. But if I ever do a revision, and I kind of plan to do a second edition at some point, and maybe bring some other co-authors on, who knows, but, have that, get more photos. And that's the nice thing about, the availability of information, people taking pictures, people going different places that they wouldn't necessarily normally go, and having a phone, on them at all times that can take pretty decent pictures. Being a cell phone, it's it improves your chances of getting those photos.
One of the challenges for Justin, I think, when you write a book, and tell me if I'm wrong, you took a lot of scientific evidence, like a lot of papers, like a lot of your references were scientific publications and papers, and then you had to dissect that and put it into more of a format that laymen, people that weren't, scientists, that they could digest and understand and enjoy reading, right?
Yeah. Or not even they didn't even have access to it. I work at a university, and so I've got access to the library, a lot of different journals. If my university doesn't have the journal, then I can order it from somewhere else and get that, article. So I can get these obscure articles. I actually got a dissertation sent to me from Australia, like the physical copy. And they sent it in I got in trouble with the library because I was supposed to go through them, and I just contacted the library in Australia directly. But they sent me Gavin Bedford's dissertation on pythons, and he had a lot of good information on Centralian carpets and also Darwin carpets. So nice. that played a nice role. But I scanned the whole thing in, into a PDF, and then sent the physical copy back through my library to try to make restitution there. But it's difficult to, first of all, to get the material, and then to digest it, read it. I mean, you got to read several papers. You're reading these, 10-page papers, and then you get maybe a couple sentences or even a paragraph if it's a really good article. And so you're not getting a lot for all that time spent. So it is a time consuming thing. And I guess I saw my position at the university, I'm writing scientific publications all the time, and so that kind of goes into that. And I thought, why not bring that scientific literature to the masses, or make it in
it's a very readable book, right? Like it's not just a textbook where you go and you look in the back of the front table of contents, what you're looking for. You can read it like a regular book, which I thought was very useful.
That's good to hear. I did hear the opposite as well, that it's just too, almost like a textbook. It's too scientific or something. But hey, to each their own. And if people find something good out of it, then great. If not, then find a better one, I guess.
Write your own.
Yeah, exactly.
So Justin, with anyone that you collabed or published a book with, was there somebody, like if we were talking about carpets or even chondros, was there somebody that you verified any information with, like somebody either you looked up to or was like a mentor, or somebody you just knew that was successful with the species and kind of went back and forth with them?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of keeping green tree pythons kind of came to me from Terry, and Terry Phillip. Yeah, he's kind of I would say he's my mentor in that area of green tree pythons. And so, you know, talking with him, the things that he was kind of pitching to me at the time fit what these scientific publications were saying. So he seemed to be keeping a little differently from what was recommended in the books. And then obviously hearing Daniel Natusch on some of those early podcasts and you know, hearing some of the things that he reported at ICAST. I wasn't able to make it to ICAST, but heard about his talk and kind of some of the gasps that were occurring with some of the things he was saying. You know, one of the big things that just hit me and probably hit everybody else was the idea that wild green tree pythons, and this is backed by the, you know, scientific literature, is that they don't get 1,000 grams. You know, they're like 600 grams is a big green tree python in the wild. And we've got these, you know, kilogram plus green trees that are more like a ball python than a green tree python, you know. And then actually getting out there to Iron Range and seeing them in the wild and seeing kind of their habitat, getting in the forest and feeling the temperatures and, you know, all that stuff, just, you know, it just kind of that was the motivation. That was kind of the idea. And then, you know, give me the, I don't think they're an easy snake to keep. I think they're one of the more difficult species to keep, at least successfully year after year. You know, you're not going to ever mass produce green trees like you will ball pythons or, you know, most other captive bred pythons, carpet pythons.
Right.
So
that's what we're hoping for. That's what we're hoping on.
Yeah.
We don't ever want it to get
right.
like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing. And in its own right. But.
Justin, here's my thought on the whole size thing, right? Because, you know, Nick Mutton was the first one that come on my show, and like, you know, Nick's style, right? He just fucking, he just drills it. And so, but it was really shocking to me because, you know, he was saying 400 to 600 grams and he knows they're a lot smaller. And then you have people who have plenty of success with chondros, numbers wise, with bigger snakes, like bigger females. Right. And for me, I was right where I started finding out, like, oh, wow. Cause dude, I came from the ball python, department, and if slamming with food is the game, then I'm cool. I know how to do that. Right. But then that's when I realized, like, you know, as I'm hearing more people's, like, you know, like, it was started with a lot of people going mice versus rats. Right. And I'm thinking, well, why is that? And then I realized, okay, maybe these things don't need to be fed as much. Like, even while hearing some people doing food cycling where you would up the food, well, they're upping up smaller meals just more frequently, right? So it's not just something where you give them a large rat or, you know, something heavy, even though that works too. But it made me think, like, well, maybe everything isn't meant to be gigantic. But I do know that if they are kept in captivity and they are fed like they are in captivity, where in the wild they don't get a lot of options, they get what they can get. But if something is fed on a regular schedule, you will have snakes that do get bigger than others, right? Sure. And I haven't done anything extreme with my feeding. I feed everything the same, but I do have certain, mainly Biak locality females that are quite bigger than, like, you know, for instance, maybe a monocory that I have or another different locality. I mean, I even have a Numford Island Biak that laid a clutch of 14 eggs, and she's 700 grams. She's not big at all in my eyes. So I do know that just like in humans, there are things that meant to get bigger or smaller than each other, right? But I agree. I don't think everything's meant to have, you know, food doesn't need to be blasted in so many of these things like they are. And it's worked for a lot of people, but I've opened my eyes a lot since having people on the show who've actually told other ways of how they look at chondros and their weights. And I mean, I've already believed that ball pythons are overfed, but we could get away with that. And that's what makes production. But me, I'm looking at longevity in life. Call me a sap, but I'd rather do something to keep this snake here longer versus let me maximize the clutches for 10, 11 years and so long. You know what I mean? That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and in the natural environment, they are not eating well. So a lot of things I'm saying is based on the Australian populations, and that's where much of the information is coming from. All of the scientific publications, most of them are done on populations in Australia. I think Dan Natusch did a few, studies from the Indonesian or New Guinea green trees, but what I'm finding with the Australian populations is they are not eating very often, right? They Wilson did a study and set up cameras, right, of green tree pythons in ambush position, hoping to catch them catching a meal. I think he filmed 75 hours of green trees in ambush position. Now, these are green trees actively waiting for things to walk by to grab. And he recorded 3 feeding observations. 1 was a rodent and 2 were moths. So, if they're striking at moths and eating moths, they're not getting, all they can eat rodent buffet out there. There's also in the book, I included just some information on some of the prey species, some of the documented small mammal species that they've been found to eat in the wild. And I looked into their natural history. How often are they reproducing? And a lot of these things are maybe having 2 babies, every few months. And so they're not like our, European rats that are pumping out 10, 12 babies at a time. And also the availability of prey is probably, I think if you went out and did a survey in that area, you'd probably find more green pythons than you would their prey species.
Wow.
they're just more abundant in the area, and they can survive off of less, you know what I mean? So I there's a lot of confounding factors when you factor in captivity versus the wild. And like you said, production, you're probably going to need to feed them more than they're eating in the wild if you want to reproduce them more frequently. In the wild, they're probably breeding every 3 to 4 years, whereas we probably want that to happen a little more in captivity. But I will, when I go to captive, breeding colonies of green tree pythons, and I see half of them hanging their tail down and it's full of, compacted feces, I'm just thinking, okay, we're doing something wrong, and these are not slouches. These are some of the top breeders in the country. And I'm just thinking, we don't understand green tree pythons. And that was kind of another, impetus for the book.
Do you know what the main prey species is in the wild?
It varies a bit, and it also varies by size. Of course, the smaller ones are eating the lizards, mainly skinks, and the larger ones. There's the Cape Melomus. I'm not exactly sure how to say that. The Australians are probably laughing at me right now, but it's a small rodent. It almost looks like a deer mouse, and it's about the size of a large mouse to maybe a small rat. So 20 grams is kind of where they're weaned, and then which is about the same size as a weanling mouse, and then they get up to maybe 45 grams as an adult. So probably that's one of their main prey species. There's also the Cape York rat. It's a burrowing species. The Melomus actually gets up into the trees, and so it's potentially there could be interactions above ground as well. But and then there's Antechinus, a cinnamon Antechinus that also occurs in the forest in Cape York. So those are the 3 documented species of mammal that were known to be preyed upon by green trees. But again, they're not finding a lot of food items in wild green tree pythons, at least in Australia. Could be completely different in New Guinea. I don't know.
I think anybody who's just getting their feet wet with breeding green tree pythons, like for me, when I got my very first green tree python baby and I realized how tiny they were, and then I saw a day 1 pink, right? That's what everyone was feeding it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, it's going to eat this? You know what I mean? And sure enough, you realize, okay, it can. And then you realize a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't want to eat it. So what do? You assist feed it. And you do all this other crazy shit, right? But then that made me come to realize that what are these things really eating in the wild? And, we had an episode with a guy named Kenny who works closely with Vin Russo. And, he dropped some knowledge about what he does with his fussy or picky eaters, or if you even want to call them picky. At the end of the day, they're not eating what they're naturally supposed to be eating, right? But he throws in a United States captive born and bred crescent gecko in there, and it's like day and night. And I implemented that to the T, and it's worked for me. It's crazy. It's like a light goes on. It's like, holy shit, look how these things are acting. Like we're talking zero stress. Like none of this whole like I'm talking all that's out the door. Even chick down. Because I get sick of chick down. I really do. Okay. and I'm just saying that there are other options out there. And so the lizard thing was automatic. But then I had someone else on the show. Wasn't it All the Tree Tuesday? Rich Crowley, his name was. And he said something about how they were documented where even roaches, baby neonates would eat insects like roaches in the wild if they could. So it seems like anything that they could handle that could go down, they're going to eat. Like if I'm hearing that they're eating moss, like, anything could be on the menu at this case, but they're not getting mice pinky. That's not really common out there, right?
I mean, yeah, the young animals that are just weaned, that might be a reasonable prey item, but usually they don't switch over to mammals until they turn green. That's kind of the switch to move out of the sun dappled patches on the edge of the forest where they're yellow. They blend in better there, and they are also feeding on lizards. Once they turn green, they move into the forest and they start feeding on mammals. And it, you know, I'm not sure if it's a size thing or, you know, what causes that, but that seems to coincide with the switch in their diet preferences. Now, that's not to say, like, there was a picture just the other week that somebody took in Australia of an adult female eating a fairly good sized skink. So, you know, they'll still take the lizards and things, other reptilian prey, but for the most part, they switch to mammals when they turn green.
I feel like if they could talk to us, I feel like they would say lizards are like their filet mignon. I feel like that's if they could have that shit on, like steadily, I feel like they love that the most based off what I'm seeing. Yeah,
hatchlings for sure. And I think, you know, when we like reptiles, so we don't necessarily want to feed lizards to snakes, you know, so we're trying to trick them into eating these
It's nothing personal, gecko people. Listen,
sure,
guys, it's circle of life. I can't help it. You know what I mean? It's either my snake or your gecko, and the geckos are going down.
Well, and I think too, I mean, if we get past that and, you know, even have like feeder suppliers that breed certain reptile species for food, you know, how many species, like this was really dawned on me when I got Mark O'Shea's Book of Snakes. I was looking through there. I'm like, oh, that is a cool looking snake. Why doesn't anybody keep these? Oh, they specialize on blind snakes. Okay, yeah, that's how, you know, I'm not gonna raise blind snakes to feed this thing. So, you know, there's so many cool reptiles out there, but they're just so dietary niche preferences just preclude, you know, us from really doing well with them or keeping them in captivity. So, I mean, part of it's just getting past that mental hurdle of, you know, I like lizards, you know, because I got colonies of the morning geckos and I got some binos geckos with that in mind, like, oh, I can feed a picky pygmy python, but I just can't bring myself to do it. You know, like I get attached to they're just such cool little geckos. So I need to get past that, but you know.
Have you never tried it? You never tried it with any species?
I did try it with a crested gecko. I got back from a show and I had one deli that I missed, and there was a crested gecko in there. So and I realized it a couple days later that it was sitting out, you know, on the counter. And so I opened it and the crested gecko was a little out of it. And I'm like, I maybe put this to good use. So I threw it in with one of the picky Antaresia babies, and he took it right off the bat. Like MJ was saying, you know, just very happy to say, okay, finally a lizard. I'm sick of these pink things.
Yeah, but okay, now what Bill has stated on this show, and this is going to kind of come to a point that I want to mention, because I just visited my good friend Socrates over in Florida, and his numbers are up there clutches wise, and, you know, in a sense, neonates equal work, but Socrates has said that he's gotten repeat clutches from females that have given him babies that eat no problem on their first try, and it's almost like documented, right, on schedule, where he's getting clutches now where there's no more really much fuss. Yeah, I'm sure if there was 15 babies, you might have one or two, but for the most part, they're crushing. And does that have something to do with captivity breeding back? And Bill, didn't you say something you're having similar success with that as well? Like you don't have as many as problematic feeders like you did the first couple of years. Wasn't that something you stated?
Well, I mean, I still get the gauntlet of picky feeders, and sometimes it's clutch specific, and sometimes it's just one or two out of a clutch. But I think green trees, like a lot of things, like blood pythons, for example, you know, the longer they are kept in captivity, the more they, you know, are bred in captivity, the farther you get along in generations, just basically the easier they get. I think the husbandry gets easier. I think they get easier to breed. And, you know, babies probably are getting established easier, you know, just the more generations that they are in captivity. I mean, of course, I don't have anything to back that up scientifically, but it's just been mine and others' observations that they're just becoming a little bit easier, you know, than they were like in Rico and Trooper's day.
I think too, like we've got a lot of examples of that in herpetoculture where, you know, you look at Western hognoses. they're meant to eat toads. They come out of the egg wanting a toad in the wild, and we've got them to come out of the egg and eat a pink mouse, and do very well. And there's
more consistently, more consistently. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Antaresia, I know I bred some of the wheat belt Stimson's pythons, some of the first ones several years ago, and the first generation from those animals, they were a big pain to get established. But the ones that I'm producing now, 3-4 generations later, not as difficult.
Not as tough.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Like you said, looking at other python species, we've seen it before. And so. Yeah,
it makes sense. And I mean, you always wonder how, domestication, when do you consider something domesticated? When it's just goes by your rules rather than nature's rules, and produces whenever.
That was one of the other things that I wanted to kind of touch on when Justin was talking about observing these things in the wild. The wild is a great place to start, like your husbandry with the species. But I think there's a fine line between, getting these things and optimizing them in captivity versus how they're living in the wild. Right. Mm-hmm. Because they live and produce it at 500 grams and are parasite ridden and are starved to death doesn't mean that's the optimal way to keep and reproduce them in captivity. So I think there's a sweet spot, mm-hmm. about where to be there. It's a great starting point, but if you want to really maximize the captive experience, then you're going to alter that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the funny things I remember that Terry Phillip would say is we've got, he kept prairie rattlesnakes at the zoo. He's like, I'm not shoveling snow into their cage, even though they experience snow in the wild, those kind of things. We identify what's important and what's necessary. And, again, they're adapted and have evolved to fit a certain niche and perform a certain way. So obviously, if you get something that's only feeding, once a month or less, and then you're feeding it weekly or bi-weekly or something to pump it up to size or something, then you're probably going to have problems. You can't change nature too much. You still have those restrictions, and you're going to run into problems if you try to get around those things. The other thing that kind of hit me was looking at the temperature data in some of these areas. And I mean, it's a flat line, it's like 75 to 85, and that's the band, and that's where they live. And really, you don't see much variation, but you do see a pretty huge variation in rainfall. The wet, dry seasons are probably a lot more important than temperature. So cycling, do we really need to cycle a green tree python with temperature? Or, I'm sure they could fit into that. And the ones in Australia definitely have kind of a dip in the winter in temperatures. But
and the wet and dry season, how does that affect their prey availability?
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that's when their prey is available in greater abundance, at least. And a lot of these mammal species are timing their reproductive events with the onset of the wet season, the increase in fruits and things like that.
Yeah, again, that's where, like in captivity, food cycling might come in, be advantageous.
Exactly. And if you don't understand their natural history, you're not going to know when to food cycle or how long to food cycle, things like that. So, and I think that's probably the more natural way to do it. And it seems like people who do practice food cycling have pretty good success. I don't know. I think I'm just too busy. I don't think about, I'm just like, oh, that one looks hungry, I better feed it, kind of thing.
I mean, we've had plenty of people who don't do any food cycling. They just keep the same schedule and they've had success. Yeah. And I think Marshall, you said this, and Ryan Young, but whatever you have for a while, at some point we'll get used to whatever the hell it is that you're doing. But one thing that I do want to talk about that I feel like is a huge misconception when coming into the game is obviously feeding is one thing we're talking about, where that's probably one of the biggest killers in the captivity reptile world is people are feeding things way too much, right? But also the heat elements, right? Like I do know people are told one number of basking, and so when a lot of people aren't really too knowledgeable, they'll get a tank or a Zumet or Exoterra, and they'll put a bulb right over it, right? And they're instantly giving it an insane amount of basking for 12 hours because that's what they're told, right? Mm-hmm. But even even further than that, and doing what the 101 is for, like, you know, basking for a snake. I feel like, don't you feel like that's also a big killer, and also something that people don't understand that is maybe keeping them back from breeding, is how hot they keep their snakes? Because I learned that myself the hard way this year. You know what I mean? And I feel like the whole heating side of things is something to figure out just as important with the food. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. And I think traditionally they've been kept probably too hot. Like I said, in the wild, 75 to 85 is pretty much their range. And that's not to say they're not going to sit in the sun. There was a picture recently from somebody down in Australia that found one sitting in full sunlight for an hour or two, you know, just baking itself. So for what reason? I don't know. You know, I asked him to look like it had a food bolus. Nope. It just was some skinny random green tree just basking. So, you know, they should probably be given those opportunities. And I really liked Daniel Natush's answer when you asked him if he was going to keep them, how he would do that. And he was talking about, you know, room size cage. And, you know, I think with any reptile, obviously we can kind of focus in and figure out what's critical and what's very important to keep them happy and successfully, as well as reproduce them. So, you know, we can get smaller and smaller enclosures, but I mean, in the wild, these things are moving up and down a 20-foot tree pretty, you know, daily or at least, you know, a couple times a week. So they're moving quite a bit. They need to be thin. And so the ones we have in captivity that just sit on a perch, they never need to move because they're always given something to eat. I really like Ryan Young's philosophy on not feeding until you see him moving around the cage. Yeah. Kind of after a few days of that, you know, because that mimics more their wild condition than just.
I think that's got a lot to do with why we see these big flabby, you know, with tail hanging, just, you know, no real muscle tone. Because I mean, everything you see coming from the wild, and I know that, you know, most imports maybe have been stressed, but I mean, you never see a fat one come out of the wild. You know, they all look, if anything, you know, skinny.
Yeah.
Triangular shape. You can see the spine, maybe see the ribs on some of them. You know, and again, I know some of that's probably for the fact that they've been out of, you know, been trading hands and back and forth for a couple weeks or months, but definitely they move differently. They seem to be faster than, you know, a lot of these big kind of sluggish animals that we have in captivity.
Yeah.
Justin, I was going to ask you, we talked a little bit about food cycling. Like if you were going to, and I don't know if you've ever tried food cycling in captivity, but if you're going to try to mimic rainy versus dry seasons, food availability to animals that were breeding, how would you do it? Just like theoretically, like you would institute a fast prior to pairing, and then you would pair, and then you'd introduce small frequent meals, or like what would that look like to you, that if you were going to optimize a food cycling strategy in captive animals?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, you know, I think for the most part, in throughout most of the range of green tree pythons, both, you know, the northern and southern species, they have kind of maybe a half of the year is the wet season or less, and the other half is kind of a dry, more dormant season. They may try to you know, set up their ambush throughout the year, but for the most part, they're probably only eating, you know, that half of the year.
Yeah.
So, and
the wet season.
The wet season, yeah. And I think they time their reproduction so their babies also hatch when it's that starting the wet season, and so they'll have more prey availability at that time, and also the prey species are breeding more frequently during that time as well, because their food is also increasing as things get wetter. So, you know, I'd probably just set it up as, you know, four months of relatively frequent feeding, followed by, you know, several months of no feeding at all.
And then you would be pairing during the frequent feeding part of the year.
Or, well, and again, I mean, I like to keep my pairs together, so they'll know each other's cycles better, and so I kind of leave it to them to decide when that occurs.
When that would happen.
Yeah. And then you don't see like the, once you throw a pair together, it's like, oh, mating activity, but is that productive mating activity? Is it fitting in with their cycles? So
is there any data on like times of the year when babies have been found?
Yeah, I mean, you would think that with such stable temperatures and things, you might see them throughout the year, but they're pretty seasonal as well. And their hatching coincides kind of with that abundance of prey. So I think they have that kind of internal trigger for that kind of thing. And it probably differs in different areas, with different conditions and different rainy seasons, or some areas don't really experience much of a rainy season, and it's pretty constant rainfall throughout most of the year. So I don't know if that course, not much has been done with a lot of the populations in New Guinea as far as, what their natural history is. But so we're kind of inferring from the Australian population where most of the research has been done. But that's kind of where, the question lies. But I would think that they were probably similar, but it's hard to say.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's people like, I don't know if you follow Aaron Hopper on Instagram. He keeps all his tree monitors outside in Australia. Mm-hmm. But I mean, something like that is just, man, I know I'm in Southern California, was told I could get away with it, but just, I can't imagine the fine tuning of having it where you don't have to worry about it. And it just seems whenever he does, like, Marshall, you follow that guy, right? Aaron Hopper, the way he walks out, there's a lot of the posts of him just walking out like with his coffee to look at all his cages outside just seems like a freaking dream, dude. And watching all that rain hit his animals and just, they have the options to be shaded, not shaded. Like, I feel in a perfect world, I would love all that for my animals. But demographically, I don't feel comfortable doing that personally. But obviously Australia is like the motherland for that stuff too. Stuff you get away with.
Yeah, there was a keeper in Cairns, Michael Cermak, that used to keep green trees outside. I got to see his setups and Michael had him in kind of wire cages and fairly good sized, and they'd just be hanging outside. So it's pretty.
Hey, tell me real quick, that name has popped up recently. I forgot during the conversation, but that guy Michael Cermak, he goes back quite far, right? Like he's been around for a while.
Yeah, I don't believe he's keeping or breeding anything right now. I've known him since I met him in 2010, and he contributed a lot of information to the book as well, and he's quoted in there quite frequently. But yeah, he was one of the guys that we herped with up in the Iron Range, and we actually found it after he'd left. So it was kind of funny. Like we'll do it on our own. We don't need any help. But yeah. But I actually got a helpful tip from a book called Stalking the Plumed Serpent. Who wrote that again? I even talked about it last week. Bruce Means. Bruce Means wrote that, and there's a chapter in there on herping, looking for green trees in Iron Range, and they talk about just driving through the forest, because the Iron Range is nice because there's a road that goes straight through primary forest, and so you can basically just shine your flashlight out the window and you see a big green neon sign, and there's your green tree python. You get out and take pictures and look at it new and on stuff. So, and I'll tell you what, man, that first one, we saw that from the car, and we were actually headed somewhere else to go look at this tree, it was called the poacher tree, where they'd put these spikes up the tree to go up and collect parrots and stuff like that. And so Alan and some of those guys were ahead of us, and I'm thinking, while we're driving through the forest, let's try this trick and see if it works, because we hadn't seen one yet. And so we're looking out the windows, and I'm like, oh, there we go, right there, it works. And so we get out, and I mean, it was silent. Like we thought if we talked, it would disappear or something. Just all you hear the clicks of the cameras, and it was almost a spiritual experience. It was pretty sweet. So
yeah, I bet.
When was the last time you were ever like on an adventure like that? Like when was the last time you've traveled, and done some herping, or connect with any old friends across the world?
Yeah, I mean, I hit Australia again in May, and I was there the previous October. So
wow. How many times have you been?
I think 6 or 7 now. I'm going again in October. So we're going up to Darwin, try to duplicate the Owen Pelly success with the NPR crew. So
Wow, that's
hopefully
cool.
be the case.
So every adventure's been different, or you've been
yeah.
back there to yeah. Okay, cool.
I haven't been back up to the Iron Range yet. That was on the books. We were supposed to do that, but then the pandemic got in the way. But I'd like to make it back up to Iron Range for sure. That was a really cool spot, and really one of the easier places to get to, safe, and to experience green trees in the wild. And I mean a single study there by Wilson, I think they had 1,200 individuals that they had found and were kind of following or getting data from. So, I mean, they're pretty common up there. Now, getting there, especially during the time when you're going to see, them in numbers, is difficult, but I believe you can go up in the, winter time, like in June and July, their winter, and see quite a few. I know that Matt Somerville went up there and found like 20 of them in a week, just.
What makes it difficult to get there?
The river crossings, because in the wet season you just can't get across the river. Even so we were there in October, just like at the end of the dry season, right when it was starting to have some rain and things, and we started going across the Wenlock River, and
there's big signs, don't get out of your car, there's crocodiles and stuff, and so I'm driving, and I'm like, I start going through the river, and they're like, speed up, slow down, turn, go, I'm like, oh no, and I start getting bogged down, like slow, and I'm like, oh no, we're not gonna make it across. I just kind of gunned it, and we made it across. I'm like, okay, I'm done driving. Alan, you can drive. Scared me to death. Yeah, that would be shitting bricks. Pretty great. So yeah, but during the wet season, the only way you're getting there is either by helicopter or plane, or taking a boat up there, because it's just the roads are too difficult to make it up there. So
wow.
Let's talk about your most sketchy Australia trip.
Yeah.
Owen had to have been there.
I'm trying to think. Oh, so when we were up in Darwin, we were herping on Fog Dam, which is the spot where water pythons are pretty abundant, right? It's like the highest density of predators in the world, and there's just water pythons all over the place. And so we're looking for one. We see this dark snake on the road, and Nick Mutton jumps out, and he's sure it's a juvenile water python, so he chases it down. It goes down the dam next to the water, and Nick's down there looking for the snake with his back to the water. And I mean, this is the dry season, so all the crocodiles are concentrated in one little area behind him, right? And all of a sudden we see these little fish jumping out of the water in a line towards Nick, and we're like, dude, you have to come up here or you will be eaten. He's like, oh yeah, there's crocodiles here. He's
the way he talks.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, dude. I was like, we were probably a few seconds away from calling your wife and telling her that Croc had a nice fatty meal. So this is pre Jim Nick. So he
was a heavy set, huh, back then?
Oh yeah. I've got a picture that I could use for blackmail if I needed to. So we were herping out looking for Owen Pellies, because there was reports of an Owen Pelly that was seen in this. They told us exactly which tree and where, and so we were there looking, and like we got there as early in the morning as we could, and we're looking, we're just scouring the rocks and trees and looking through everywhere we can think in this area to try to get lucky and see that snake. And all of a sudden it got hot. Like, I mean, I've done a ton of backpacking in deserts and things, and I've never experienced heat like this. It was insanely hot. I thought I'm like, I need to sit in the shade or I'm going to pass out and die here. It's that hot. And like in the shade, it's, we temp gun the shade, and it was like 140 degrees, it's ridiculous.
Oh my God.
You're just baking out there. 140 degrees Fahrenheit, just the surface temperature, but your shoes are basically melting as you're walking along this stuff. It was ridiculously hot. So, we just laid in the shade. But yeah, Nick took his shirt off, and he had like this head net on, and I took a picture, or somebody took a picture of him in this state, and it's a great little shot. So
see, like situations like that, I might buckle, man. I don't know. I give it salute to all you herpers out there. God bless. But I purposely have it here where I'm not complaining. I'm good, you know.
But I will say, I mean, getting out and experiencing these things in the wild it's awesome.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. I encourage anyone to get out there and find the species you like in the wild.
I would like to see a chondro in the wild.
Yeah,
Be a tough trip, bro. I'm telling you, it'd be a tough trip for you and me.
Well, Iron Range isn't too bad. Like, I mean, the drive out there is miserable because you're mostly on dirt roads for like 16 hours. But once you get there, it's great. There's actually like a hotel that you can stay at that's pretty posh, pretty nice.
Yeah.
They like
It feels like how many stars?
My ears perked up.
Yeah, no. They went and harvested a bunch of shellfish and fish out of just in the ocean right next, to the hotel and fed us, like cooked up all the shellfish and stuff. It was pretty sweet. Yeah. And so
nice.
we all stayed in this it had like a deck overlooking the area, and it was pretty sweet. Yeah.
Sounds better than an Indonesia trip, that's for sure.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about getting carjacked and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, ransomed. Yeah.
Yep. Just know you can't bring alcohol with you up there because it's a dry area because of the Aboriginal communities up there.
There goes Bill.
You might want to take your Indonesia, your New Guinea,
and I don't want to be in their jail either.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. That would not be
jail.
fun.
No, that would not be a good place for me.
Yeah.
No,
you have to wait till you go a little bit further south, and I'm sure you'd survive. Yeah. But it's fantastic up there, and lots of other cool snakes and reptiles up there. That we one of the first things we found up there was a frilled dragon. Just
cool.
hanging out on the side of a tree, and we were able to grab that and get some cool pictures and stuff. Big scrub pythons up there. Cape York spotted pythons. Pretty sweet.
I mean, are we talking about territory where like the smallest spider could kill you? Like, isn't that what Australia is known for? Is like just insane, venomous fucking stuff that could just really ruin your day, if not life.
I mean, that's the image they portray.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. Me and a couple buddies went and did this tour of Western Australia. My friend slept out open air in a sleeping bag. Nothing happened. No spiders got him. No, no dingo ate his baby or anything. Pretty. I think they like that image. The same thing with like the cassowaries. Everybody talks about how scary and dangerous cassowaries are. We were sitting just this last trip in May. We were hanging out on the beach up in Cape York. At Eddie Bay, and this cassowary just starts walking through, and like it was kind of funny because there was this family eating a picnic lunch at this table, just right off the beach, and the cassowary kind of poked its head over the table and like over this kid's shoulder, and the kid looked up and there's this dinosaur right next to it. Starts crying and freaking out, and the cassowary just kind of walks away, and people are like following it with their cameras and stuff, and it's just walking. It's not running at anybody or attacking anybody. And then we drive up the road, and there's like this manicured yard, somebody's nice house, and there's this grandpa and a little grandson, and there's a cassowary just walking with them through the yard. And
so
it's like, there's that sensationalism of everything there is going to kill you, but it's really, not that big of a deal. And
this is easier said, bro, because I've been in front of cassowaries and they're fucking intimidating, man. I saw a full grown one at Miami Zoo that like was very bold and came, obviously there was a fence in front of us, but was not scared of coming straight to the fence and like sizing me up. Yeah. And it was doing some like beating on it, like some weird like vibration on his chest. Yeah. And I was like, and I've heard stories, obviously. I heard about that breeder in Florida who got killed, that older guy. And then I just saw some at my buddy Blake's ranch who had, I think they're about 4 years old. So they weren't full grown, but still like they're growing that talon. And I think just more of an impressive animal. Yeah. But if you don't know, like if you haven't been like experienced that, definitely intimidating. It's you just don't see birds like that,
Yeah.
prehistoric. You know what I mean?
It's a dinosaur. It's
It's a
freaking.
dinosaur.
It's a dinosaur. If there's anything that's a dinosaur on this earth,
That's
that's that. You know.
Yeah,
And I mean, all the wild ones I've seen. You know, I've seen a handful, and they've all been pretty chill. I don't know if it's in captivity, it's like, oh, feed me. You know, like you get a snake in captivity. Like all the scrub pythons I've interacted with in Australia have been puppy dogs. Like they've been pretty chill. I think I had one take a bite at me once when I was trying to get it off the road, you know, and put my foot in front of its face. Maybe that was Rico. It bit his shoe or something. But you know, I've picked them up and they haven't been like trying to strike and all pissy or anything. They've just been chill. So I don't know. There, you know, it could be a lot of things, but yeah, those wild cassowaries haven't been big deal at all. In South Australia last year, we see this giant king brown in the road right at Mulga, and so we're all excited because we hadn't seen many snakes on the trip. It was more of a lizard trip, I guess, but we run over there and we're checking it out and stuff, and it flattens out its head like a cobra, you know, and it's making its way past me, and I'm filming, and I just thought, he looks pretty chill. So I reached down and picked him up by the tail and just kind of tailed him and held him for a minute and got a couple pictures and then took him and laid him off the road, and he was chill. You know,
that's a snake you don't want to get bit by, right?
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's one of the top 10
like,
venomous, you know. But he was chill. I mean, he wasn't trying to strike or anything. Like basically, like when I picked him up, he was kind of like, okay, you know, here we go.
Justin, you mean to tell me you're pro free handling?
So I will say there's a difference. I would not do that to a rattlesnake. You know, like there's differences in different venomous snakes. And I mean, that's the way you pick up a venomous snake in Australia. And I've held a couple. Like on that same trip, I picked up a copperhead, one of the Highlands copperheads. And I've held an inland taipan. It was somebody's pet, but I got to hold one of those. But as long as you know how to tail properly, you know, they're not too scary. I mean, if it's like, you know, 100 degrees out and they're lightning, you know, I'm not going near one. But this one was relatively cool. It was probably 70 degrees out, you know, it was turning into dark. And so he was pretty slow and cold. So I'm like, I feel a little comfortable with this one. And the copperhead, same thing. He wasn't very warm and he wasn't very flighty or anything. They're pretty chill. So it depends on the snake, but yeah. I haven't had any close calls with venomous snakes in Australia, but I have in America, like taking pictures of a Mojave and all of a sudden it elevates off the road and, you know, it comes within a couple inches of your fingers. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I need to stay a little further back.
One of the things that I've noticed, you know, obviously after having Daniel and Tush on the show, you know, we talked a lot about hydration, right? And comparisons of yeah, no problem. Comparisons on how they're drinking in captivity versus how they're actually getting hydration in the wild, right? And you know, you had people who are non-sprayer believers, but then you have people who say that's the only way they drink is if you spray them. Clearly, that's not the case. Bill and I, even Marshall, have had chondros go straight to the bowl and chug water. But in the wild, let's talk about that, Justin. How do you really believe a lot of these chondros or even any kind of reptiles that live in the trees are getting hydration and how they're drinking water?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm going to preface this with some just kind of off the wall thinking a little bit, but so there was a chameleon researcher, right? And he was thinking, or maybe he was just a hobbyist. I'm not even sure if he's a, you know, true like paper writing researcher, but he said, I've seen chameleons do everything. I've seen them breed. I've seen them lay eggs. I've seen them hatch from eggs. I've seen them eat. I've seen them do all the poop or whatever, but I've never seen them drink water. And so he's like, I got to figure out what's going on. So he took a chameleon before it was going to sleep and weighed it. And then he put it up in the tree and watched it, made sure it just kind of stayed in the same area. The chameleon slept all night long. He picked it up in the morning and weighed it, and it had gained substantial amount of weight. And that's, you know, the nighttime is when the fog rolls in and that, you know, that fog or whatever, he summarized that it's breathing in its hydration. So it's breathing in that moist air and actually gaining weight, getting that moisture. So he's like, no wonder they never drink, and no wonder they only come from areas that have this fog occur. Now, I'm not saying that's the case with green tree pythons, but sometimes, these answers are a little bit out of the box. It's probably simpler for a green tree python. Like maybe they're just in the rainforest. There's a lot of plants, and there's a lot of plants that kind of capture water.
Right.
And so, when they're moving through the trees, they're probably passing, water dishes every couple feet, these ferns and these clinging plants and all sorts of things. So I think they probably don't have a shortage, at least in the wet season. Now in the dry season, they're probably fasting, going extended times without water. And so, they'll probably take any water they can get. Now, there's also streams running through, and I'm sure they'll crawl down and take a drink out of a stream. I'm
sure like they have access to some sort of running water at some point, right? But, and to kind of like jump species here, I've seen, because one thing I know about emerald tree boas, if you give them something to drink, they will chug, man. They will drink a shit ton of water. And I'm like, okay, I mean, hydration is probably more of an important aspect for them than a chondro, because not only their size and whatnot, but then I also seen multiple pictures of emeralds right over like a riverbank or right over water. And I feel like they're over water a lot more than we think. You know what I mean? But also like that's an emerald, I feel like. But I don't. And I just feel like hydration is so important to both or any species, but really how much are they really needing, and how much are they really getting? Then I hear that a lot of them get hydration through the prey items that they eat too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a lot of ways they can skin a cat, so to say. There's a lot of ways they can get water. I had an interesting observation just here locally. I was herping last year, and it started to rain just in my my neighborhood area. So I drove up the canyon a bit and found a rubber boa on the road. Now this road runs parallel to a stream with fresh flowing water pretty much all year round. And the rubber boa came out on the road and was drinking from a puddle when the river's a foot away. So maybe it's dangerous to drink out of a stream. If you fall in and get too cold, you might not come out. Or in Australia, there's crocodiles swimming in those streams. You might be a meal for a crocodile if you get too close to the water. So maybe they're taking advantage of other water sources other than the rivers and streams. But
crocodiles fucking freak me out, man. Like I respect them.
Oh yeah.
If you see one, like I just went to Gatorland and they had some crocs, but then they were talking about the biggest one being the saltwater crocs at Australia. And I don't want to see anything bigger than what I saw. Like that is a fucking very intimidating talk about living dinosaur. Like, holy shit, like,
yeah, that's something you don't mess with. You don't take those lightly, because they will eat you. There's no doubt about that.
You know what I saw at Daytona? I wanted to shake his hand, and I hope I say his name right, but Graziani, or what's his last name?
Graziani. Yeah.
Graziani, walking around just with one arm like it's nothing. And I was like, wow. But it was almost like he was proud of it. And I was like, that's why the Florida people are different. God bless them. That's their, what I mean?
Yeah, it's I mean, I was reading a book, Eric Pianka's book about, his adventures in lizard land or whatever, where he did all these studies in Australia. When he was a kid, he found this bomb that hadn't exploded, but then I think he took it home and it went off or somehow. So it exploded and he lost some pieces of his fingers, and like he had to be bedridden for a few months to recover and stuff. And he kind of walked around a limp, but then he'd go to these herpetological conferences and he'd had stub fingers or whatever. And so had everybody else, but they had them for different reasons. You can tell the venomous workers by their stubby fingers. You look at Chandler, who got bit by that cobra, and he and that other Florida, Florida people, they're bumping nubs, like, hey, nub brother kind of thing. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a badge of honor, I guess, or a badge of stupidity.
Nub brother, I never heard of that.
Yeah. However you want to look at it, but
yeah, man, God bless him.
Florida man.
So what's your overall, 2024? You've seen a lot, obviously. I'm talking within captivity in the United States, the reptile pet keeping trade, the breeding side of things. I kind of want to get your take on the ball python market and all that. Like, what has always been your take on like ball python breeders and where things have gone, and how people who are new in ball pythons are losing their mind, saying that everything's crashing. Like, what's your take on all that, Justin?
Yeah. Well, I'm probably not the best person to ask, but so I was business partners with Ben Morrill. He went to the same
Yeah,
school as
shout out to
me.
Ben.
So
Dr.
yeah,
Ben.
he's a great guy. So we, we were business partners for a while, and he loves ball pythons. Like he's all about ball pythons. So he got me got me excited. And so kind of the first thing, I think we got our first ball python project was like a pair of het pieds back in the day, and they're like, I think we got them for $1,000, and that was like a steal because they were, a lot more expensive. And we actually produced a pied in our first attempt at, breeding them or whatever. We got 3 eggs and one was a pied. So, it was pretty exciting. And we got a few other morphs along the way and got pretty into that. And so I followed it pretty closely back then, but man, today it just makes my head swim. There's just so many different combinations and some really nice looking snakes. I can definitely appreciate the morphs. I think I traded for some, Ford combination morph at a show a little while ago. And so that's one of the few ball pythons I have in my room right now. I actually sent all my ball pythons on breeding loan to a friend, and he's
So no ball python book coming?
Not for me.
On the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. I think the Barkers covered that pretty well, so I don't know that I knew.
I heard you're coming out with the Morph God 2 book.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about being out of date as soon as that hits print, the morphs,
Right.
Yeah, it's hard enough with the carpet morphs.
What else are you keeping? What does your collection look like now?
Yeah, so I mean, I got into it for the carpets and kind of around the time the book came out, the carpet morphs were going crazy, and Nick was bringing a bunch of stuff in from Europe, and so it was just a lot of morph driven stuff. And I don't know, I'm into more of the wild type stuff, and so I've done a little bit with the morphs, and I have zebras and things like that, but for the most part, I just like the wild type stuff. So I kind of focus more on Antaresia. And so I keep all 4 species. Hopefully the 5th putative species will be in the collection soon, but I like the Antaresia a lot. And I've done well with some of the harder to find stuff like the wheat belt Stimsons. Those have done really well. I've been breeding those for probably almost a decade now. So good times with those, and the little pythons. I really enjoy those. I think the green trees fit in with that little python thing, but sure. I don't keep as many as the Antaresia are kind of a big focus. I've got a few lizard projects, like mostly knobtail geckos. I recently purchased some Asper, some of the spiny knobtails. I've got a black female and kind of a white male, so it's kind of hopefully get some more whites. I really like those gray, white Asper. They're pretty neat looking, but the black ones are pretty impressive too. So I've got some Agurnia. I bred Hosmeri last year. I got some Depressa a year before that. I got a pair of Depressa and a pair of Hosmeri from Alan Rapashi, and really enjoy the Agurnia. I'd like to maybe get some Epsisolus down the road. Really cool lizards. A little bit of an empty cage syndrome because they run and hide as soon as you come in the room. So I've got cameras that I can watch them on my phone. So enjoy them that way, I guess. But and then Aspidites. I love the Aspidites. We're actually writing an Aspidites book right now with Lucas Lee and Nick and Dr. Loafman. So the 4 of us are writing a book on 2 species. So kind of a little bit of a crowd, but it's been fun to work with Lucas. And then I think that's, I caught some California Kings. I wanted to keep Cal Kings from Utah, the Utah locality Cal Kings, for a long time. And I finally found one. It was on the road. I'm like, this thing's going to get run over because all I'd seen up to that point are DORs. So I'm like, I'm going to take this one home. And then a friend of mine got me a female that he found out in the wild close to where this male came from. So, and she turned out to be gravid. So she had some babies, laid some eggs, and hatched them out. And
it sounds like you got a lot, pretty big, varied collection. Like, what do you do when you go on these adventures for weeks at a time? You have, I guess, your wife is down to help, or your kids, or both, or what?
Yeah, both of them. My wife is really nice to help. I usually try to pay her pretty handsomely to,
Oh yeah, I've been
super
there.
happy about it. But, and then my daughter, my youngest daughter, will help out in the reptile room. She knows it pretty well, and so same kind of thing. She loves to make a little money, so that's usually what I resort to. It was nice when Ben and I were partners, because then he could come out and take care of stuff when I was gone, and vice versa. So, but yeah, my wife and kids do pretty well. I've got 5 kids, and most of them living at home right now, so they're all semi-willing participants in it, but the other thing is Australia. The time to go to Australia is when things are kind of slow here, when things are cooling or not really, heavy feeding. And so I can, as long as they have water, they're good to go. So I always think if you're going to Australia, you got to go for at least 2 weeks, because, you're losing 3 days just in travel, so.
Are you keeping green tree pythons now, Justin?
Not at the moment.
Yeah. What have you?
I've kept some Marukis that I got from Terry Phillip a while back, and
Nice.
I'd like to probably keep some more, but I think I need more space for them. I want to give them I tried to give them a fairly good sized tank when I had them, but I think larger is probably better, and maybe not necessarily a tall cage, but something with, more area to move around, and probably a bigger thermal gradient. That's kind of the takeaway I got from my last go around. But
Nice.
I don't have too many people who could say they have a relation with Terry Phillip, at least a close one. And I've heard his name for years, man. I know he's legendary in many different levels in the reptile field. But what do how did you get in contact with somebody like Terry Phillip, and how have you always seen him as a reptile keeper? If you could kind of break down how you visualize or how you look at this guy as far as what he's done.
Yeah, he's kind of a recluse. He's maybe a hermit up there in South Dakota. No, I think he's mostly busy with his family. He's a family man, loves his kids, a really good dad, good husband. So, and I got to know him, I think online first, just kind of communicating. We had similar interests, and I really liked the way he saw things and kind of the methods that he used. And so I'd actually wanted to go to Reptile Gardens for a long time. And me and my wife tried, I think the year after we got married back in '98, we tried to go up to South Dakota, and our car broke down in Wyoming. It was a pretty big misadventure. We had to look for a new vehicle, and we're newlyweds, really poor. It was not the best situation. So needless to say, we didn't make it to South Dakota, but we took a family trip up there several years later with our kids, and got to meet Terry. He showed us around and stuff. And then kind of, we just developed a friendship after that. Kind of brother from another mother type thing. We really clicked. And so I've made it up there a few times. I remember he hatched out some Parentis, and I drove up the next week just so I could see a baby Parenti, so I think he's like, okay, this guy's pretty serious about this stuff. But so, yeah, we've stayed in contact. I talk to him, not too frequently, but every, few times a year, I guess is about all. But yeah, I think he did an interview with NPR back in the day, and nice. People were just knocking down his door trying to, pick his brain or talk to him or get animals from him. And I think the rough scales, when he was, breeding rough scales, he had rough scales in the country and nobody else did. He was just kind of
the first one. Pretty sure he was the first one.
Yeah, yeah. He was just inundated with people trying to be his buddy and trying to get some Carinata from him. And he's just kind of just cut himself off because it was just too much pressure. Yeah. Marshall, you've been buddies with him longer than I have. Yeah. He's
definitely, walks the walk.
Yep.
Working there at Reptile Gardens, but I'm pretty sure that's isn't it the largest reptile collection in the world?
Yeah.
As far as different species, and there's that he does a lot of venomous stuff, and I remember at one of the Chondro Coalition shows, I'm pretty sure it was Daytona, when he had first gotten the rough scales, and Dave and Tracy were there, and I think neither of them had ever seen a rough scale before. and Dave wasn't there, and he showed it to Tracy, and she rubbed it in Dave's face that she had gotten to see a rough scale, and he hadn't.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he was. I'm pretty sure he was definitely the first to breed the rough scales here.
Yeah.
And that was when, like I said, like first ones maybe ever in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, he's the man. he's had so much experience with so many different species, and he's just a wealth of information.
I've been trying to get him on, but he's shot me down.
Same with the Reptile Fight Club. I've tried to get him on there, and it's not happening. Yeah, but I mean, he's nice about it, but yeah, I just think he doesn't like the limelight, the spotlight. He likes to kind of keep to himself. But one of the, I guess, ways I got to know him better was I invited him to speak. I was organizing a carpet symposium at Tinley back in the 2010s, 2012, somewhere around there, and asked him to come speak. And man, I was just floored. He just he didn't have like a PowerPoint or anything. He just kind of walked out there and just imparted knowledge on everybody, and it was impressive. Like I was like, wow, this guy's the real deal, and everybody's just like hanging on his every word, and I'm like, man, I wish my talk was that good. He just knocked it out of the park.
You mentioned that you were or were not at ICAST. I couldn't remember.
No, Ben was there and he told me all about it, but yeah, I missed out.
Did you go to any of the arboreal symposiums back in the day, like that were in St. Louis?
No. I haven't made it to those. Yeah. I was trying
to recall when the first time we met. I know it's been a long time ago. I couldn't remember where though.
I think it was at Tinley when I did that carpet symposium I'm talking about.
Okay.
I think it was there that we met the first time. Yeah.
You still go to Tinley's, Justin, or any big shows? Like we just came back from Daytona, it was epic. But do you ever go to like any big shows anymore?
I try to. I mean, I went to the last Tinley last October and gave a talk about geckos, and then enjoyed the show for the couple days. I mean, I enjoy it just because you get to see all your old buddies and stuff, and so I try to make it out there. I got invited to go out and vend at a table at Daytona, but I don't have the time off of work, and I prefer to go herping, I guess.
What do you do for work, Justin?
I'm a virologist, so I study viruses up at Utah State University. So
wow.
Yeah, when you guys are talking COVID, I was thinking, man, somebody needs to do something about those viruses. But so I work for the Institute for Antiviral Research. I'm a research professor up there. I finished my PhD in 2005, so I've been working as a virologist ever since then in the group. Like a spot opened up in my group when I finished up, so got to slip in and make the big bucks,
Nice.
So obviously you have some sort of knowledge clearly about nidovirus in reptiles, right? It sucks because I think nido's in everything first and foremost as far as any species, but carpet's got it pretty bad, like rep with supposedly every carpet breeder has nido and has like been quiet about it, or some sort of like hush ups type stuff with nido and carpet. And I'm curious what you have to say to that and what your overall thought is with nidovirus being in collections and having the capabilities of wiping people out, all that stuff. You know what I mean? Let's hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an issue. I've seen people lose their whole collections and just watch snakes die, and not much they can do about it. It's a tricky thing because veterinarily speaking, nobody cares about exotics that much to develop, a treatment and stuff. We actually got some funding through Carpet Fest. No, was it Carpet Fest? One of the gatherings, one of the fests. Yeah, it was like
Carpet Fest. Yeah, it was,
one in Florida that was down at the.
Oh, you know what? Maybe so. Maybe the Southeast Carpet Fest.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they raised like $10,000 for nidovirus research, and half of it went to Stephen Tillis's lab with who was the PI there? Anyway, they did part of it, and then we did some of it where we took different strains of nidovirus, or it's now called serpentovirus, and we tested different antivirals that we have in our lab and found 2 or 3 commonly available antivirals that worked against the nidoviruses. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'd love to move it into the next stage of, you know, animal testing and, you know, having an experimental infection and see if you can treat it with some of these drugs in vivo. But
Well, Marshall, we heard 2 potential theories about
What I was gonna just bring up, but yeah, go ahead.
curing nidovirus when we were in Daytona. One of them was an antiviral that was used in humans. But do you guys remember the other theory
Oh, yeah.
we heard? What? Tell us more.
So this is 2 people told me this, and I don't know. One of them I think is involved with the study or closely involved. The other one had just heard it from somebody else, so I don't know if it was the same study or what. But that nido or serpentovirus is very susceptible or very sensitive to heat, and that they had actually, you know, I don't remember what the temperature was. I want to say he said 95 degrees, 95 degrees in the incubator for like 2 weeks. And it actually, when the animals came out, you know, positive animals tested negative afterwards. And, you know, that's new information, because to my knowledge, I think that, you know, from everything that I've heard, once an animal is positive, it never tests negative.
Yeah. It seems to be a chronic virus infection, and whether or not it's causing disease in that animal still, or if it's able to pass on to others, you know. But that's really interesting. I hadn't heard that. I had heard of people that put their animals in the incubator and thought it helped, but I haven't heard anything beyond that. So if that's the case,
my question is, how many of those animals survived of 95 degree temperature?
That's kind of a rough treatment there, but
that's pretty extreme.
I kind of want to try it. Only because I made, you know, I'm gonna admit something that I wanted to wait on admitting, but I do blame Ryan Young because he did give me the okay. But I bought an import over at Daytona. Not recommended, but yeah, I don't have a Jaipur locality, and that's something I've been wanting really bad. And I saw one well developed as far as, you know, not in its OCC. It is what it is. And went over to Ryan, and Ryan told me, you know, we looked at it and whatnot, and we thought it looked good. And Ryan mainly had a good look on his face, so I purchased it. But I'm just saying, if this thing comes back with Nido, I got an incubator. And it could go to 95. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? I might try. I'm not dead serious. If this thing does come in and it has Nido, I have an incubator. I could put in my closet upstairs, and I'll. Is that bad though? Is that like neglect? I mean, I don't want to get in trouble for that. I mean, that's hot. That's a hot incubator for a snake, I think.
Give it some crested geckos first.
For that extended period, that seems like a lot, but you know, who knows?
I should try 90 first, and this is, of course, if it's positive. I should try 90 first, and if that doesn't work, maybe I'll go to 92. And that doesn't work, I'll just maybe go to 90. 95 will be like my cap. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then you've done it for 6 weeks instead of 2.
I don't make the rules, Marshall.
Dr. Juarez, let's move on to your next experiment.
No, I mean, but okay, but what do you have to say to that, Justin?
No, I mean,
like, cooking them out.
You know, viruses are very integrally tied to their host, and so, you know, if a temperature of a, you know, human temperature is a lot higher than a snake temperature, resting temperature, of course. And they're also ectothermic, so their temperature depends on their environment. So, I mean, these, if they're surviving in snakes, they're probably not getting a constant 95. And so it would make sense that might kill it. Now, the thing I would worry about is if it had, you know, the goop in the lungs and stuff, if it has a progressing infection, that might be a bad mix of heat and mucus. You know, I don't know if that would help or hurt, you know, who knows, but if it's an aggressive strain and it's a death sentence, then, you know, it's not going to hurt to try. And if you can prevent it from spreading to other animals in your collection, you know, of course, I'm hoping you're using good techniques to, you know,
I think that's a good
quarantine your animals. But
that's a good point, because if you got one, because, you know, you got some that may have it or do have it, and they're perfectly fine, perfectly normal snakes, you know. But, you know, you got ones that are just on death's door, and it's I feel like there's no coming back from that. certain ones, certain ones that have that heavy one.
Yeah. Early on in my keeping career, I had this breeder that I really looked up to that was getting out of the hobby, and I got his collection. And when I was, packaging them up, getting them all bagged up, ready to take back to Utah, I noticed one was blowing bubbles, and I'm like, oh, is this one sick? And he's like, oh, they do that when they're in shed. I'm like, oh, okay, he's the expert. I've never kept this snake before. And so I put it in the bag and took it home. Well, that was a pretty severe viral infection of some sort. And we had just purchased a spider ball python back when they were $5,000 a piece. And that snake started blowing bubbles, a week or two after that. And it died like within a week. It was dead. And so I'm like, okay, obviously this, is something worse. And I dealt with that for years. And it was a pain in the neck. I think the best news about nidovirus or serpentoviruses is that they don't make it through the eggs. And so I don't know about boas, but pythons, you're good. You can hatch out babies, and as long as you're keeping them away from, any positive animals, you're okay. They should be fine. But
it's going back to like this being in everything, but just certain reptiles or certain snakes can't handle it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I wonder too if it's a matter of like, because there's been a lot of green tree python breeders that got their collections wiped out by these viruses, and so I wonder too if it's like a green tree, just for an example, a green tree nidovirus gets into a carpet python, and the green tree, it's not going to kill it, but in the carpet, it's lethal, or vice versa. They're getting these nidoviruses from other species that they wouldn't encounter in the wild, but they don't have any immunity or protection from a different one. And in the lab, we worked with 3 different nidoviruses, and we're finding that there's a lot of diversity in these viruses, and each species has kind of its own virus. Now, whether or not that was the original, species, because viruses tend to be less severe as you go on, right? We look at COVID. When COVID started, there was massive, a lot of deaths and a lot of people dying as a result of COVID infection. And then as it's kind of mutated and changed, it's gotten less aggressive, less pathogenic. You just have it's basically a cold now, right? And so it's gotten less pathogenic as it moves on. And I think that's kind of going to be the same thing we see with nidoviruses. I think they've been around for a lot longer than we know. Like there were some early cases of a respiratory illness that was not treatable by antibiotics back in the day in Burmese pythons, and a lot of Burmese python breeders had some die-offs due to
that's interesting. Justin, obviously your knowledge of COVID virus is very high. So you're saying that the COVID, it's not that our immunity is getting better against COVID, it's just COVID's becoming less virulent.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of laugh when people talk about strong immune systems, because a lot of times in a viral infection, it's your immune system that's doing the damage, because it's overreacting to the virus, and it's just releasing all these chemokines and cytokines that are causing, just massive infiltration of your white blood cells, and it's actually your own immune system that's causing the big damage when you get some of these infections. And so, saying, oh, I need to strengthen my immune system. Okay.
Well, what do they say? Like when they say herd immunity, like herd immunity against COVID now, what does that mean?
Yeah. So you've got your 2 branches of your immune system, the immediate, one that takes care of something right when you're infected. And then but no, that's the later one. That's your adaptive immune response that develops your antibodies and your memory cells, that remember that infection, and they can make antibodies to neutralize it. Now, some viruses and even some bacteria and intracellular parasites have found ways around, your immune system, and can kind of evade the immune system by hiding out neurons, like your cold sores or HIV, integrates into your DNA and stuff. So there's really elegant methods of these viruses to cause disease and stay hidden, and so they can kind of burst out and spread when they need to or whatever. But but typically, you know, as a virus, it evolves to fit a host, because we are not the original hosts of COVID-19, you know, of SARS-2 virus. We are just an incidental host, and you know, it adapted to us and it spreads really well. But a virus doesn't, if it kills the host, then it has nowhere to live, you know, replicate anymore, and so it's not going to pass on very well if it's really lethal. That's why you'll see things like Ebola. We can stop those things really quickly as long as the people trust us and know, you know, okay, I'm not supposed to wash my dead, you know, mother's body, you know, without gloves and a mask or something, because she's infected with a lethal virus. And that was the problem. That's why those viruses like Ebola were spreading, was because they thought it was white man was giving it to them. And so they'd run away from the scientists and they'd continue to do their traditional things like preparing bodies for death and stuff like that. And so they were getting Ebola from their dead relative that had died from Ebola. So, you know, typically viruses don't, and really pathogenic viruses like that are spillovers from nature, like bats and things like that are really good hosts for viruses, because they have a really robust system that doesn't let viruses infect very easily. And so only the biggest, baddest viruses can infect a bat. And so then when you get spillover from a bat into a human, it's like game over. You know, Ebola just wipes us out. And the bats don't really seem to be bothered too much by some of these things. We can't even really detect them in, you know, their original host. Sometimes it's really difficult to piece together what's going on. But typically, as a virus adapts to a host, it becomes less pathogenic and less deadly. So, you know, I'm hoping that will occur with nidoviruses or serpentoviruses in captivity. But the fact that they're so diverse and there's so many different species that have their unique nidoviruses, and that they occur in nature, we're going to continue to see them come in with imports, and maybe, you know, you import a species X and it jumps to species Y and causes, you know, a lethal disease. It's hard to say. Do
you think, just in your opinion, that nidovirus, let's say ball python nidovirus, do you think it can jump to Morelia?
That's, you know, that's the question. We don't know exactly, you know, what's going on with, you know, diversity. And again, we aren't even sure if the species we're detecting them in are the original species they came from. We do have examples in the wild, like there was a shingleback serpentovirus that was causing a massive die-off of wild shingleback lizards in Australia in the wild. We've seen some different viruses that infect turtle populations and have almost wiped them to extinction. So, you know, they can be pretty serious even in the wild. And, you know, I guess in that case, you know, if 95 for 2 weeks works, you know, it might be worth trying rather than losing the animals. But that's pretty severe treatment, right?
Bill, were you asking if, like, whatever, let's say a ball python has nido, can it give it to a chondro? Was that your question?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
So
theoretically, that's kind of similar to, you know, us getting a SARS virus or a MERS. You know, MERS came from camels, and so just people who were keeping and having close association with camels would get MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, which is a relative of SARS and, you know, the COVID virus SARS-2. So, you know, that's kind of that's what I was pitching, is maybe, you know, this ball python nidovirus jumps to a different species and is more pathogenic in that species because it hasn't adapted to it or wasn't part of its natural population. But, you know, it's hard to say. Maybe it's not that way. Maybe like the shingleback nidovirus just mutated and a more severe pathogenic form emerged. Yeah, which is also possible.
Because we know green trees are coming in from the wild infected with nidovirus.
Yeah,
right.
You know, so it's not just.
And I'm pretty sure, Bill. I have to go back and check. I'm pretty sure Socrates on his first podcast on here said that his first encounter with nido that wiped out his chondros as well came from a ball python, and he found that out. So I think that is something that can be transferred.
Well, in my example of, you know, getting that collection of womas in and having the woma, you know, that wasn't dying of this respiratory infection, but spread to a ball python, and that thing died in a week, you know,
Yeah.
it was gone.
Yeah.
And I noticed it. I'm like, oh, I better, elevate its temperature, the things you
Yeah,
used to
think,
do
right.
when something was sick. And it
Yeah.
was like, I didn't even have
Right.
a chance to react almost. Like I
Yeah,
detected it. The next day it was dead. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
And you can just tell they just instantly look like shit. They're just like, you could just, their body feels different. They become like soft. They don't become firm like they normally are. And it's just a bad scenario. Now listen, we're at the wrap up topic time, and I'm gonna go first, and then Bill or Marshall can go next. But since we're talking about nidovirus, we're talking about emerald tree boas, and I asked Daniel to touch this. I asked if can emerald tree boas get nido, because no one's really talking about getting positive nido emerald tree boas or even testing as far as for nido. I know there's panel testing, but one thing that emerald tree boas go through is crypto, just stuff that they can't handle, stuff that they puke, right? That's probably the biggest kick in the balls when first coming into any new experience keeping emeralds. Let's just say financially you can't, afford a United States captive border bred, or you can even find one, right? I mean, they're becoming a lot more worked with now, but still kind of hard to get your hands on one. So people get imports and they deal with this, and I want to know what your experience has been hearing with different reptiles that deal with crypto, but mainly emerald tree boas, you know what I mean? And what your thought process is behind that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely outside of my area expertise, but I have gleaned information from Ron St. Pierre and some of the issues that he's dealing with, and some of his ideas on that were pretty interesting. And we actually had him on Reptile Fight Club and had this great discussion,
Nice.
but it got ruined, and so we weren't able to release it. My audio didn't show up, and so I was the one that was debating him. So unfortunately, we weren't able to put that one out, but we're looking to re-record. So I'm trying to figure out how to redo the magic, but he has seen that go away, and it's hard to pinpoint what's causing that, because he said they were going great, and then all of a sudden he had some regurges, and he changed something. He changed the diet of the rodent, and that and so his hypothesis is that's what's contributing to that. I was a little skeptical about that, but I encourage him to do more studies and try to figure out.
It's come back. I just talked to him. It's all come back, by the way.
Has it? Yeah.
Yep.
So I think he was talking early on about how he's keeping them outdoors, and he said they would come out and bask in full sun, and maybe they're trying to get that 95 degrees for 2 weeks. Who knows? Maybe that's their method of dealing with these viral infections, is to sit out in the sun. So
it's a good point.
But that's my thoughts, is that I would think that the temperature might be their way of combating that, because they need to amplify their systems function by elevating, or by the temperature, right? And so they need different temperatures to do different jobs. When they eat a big meal, they'll sit out in the sun and get that energy to digest the meal. I imagine the same thing is with their immune system. Once they have some kind of infection, they seek heat, and so I think that's where that comes from, where if you have a sick animal, you'll raise the temperature a bit and try to fight that off naturally. And maybe this nido serpentovirus treatment of 95 for 2 weeks might be born of that. And if it works, then that's more evidence that might be the case.
I'd be more interested in the studies of the antivirals, like the human antivirals, because if you treat a human with an antiviral, it cures them or it shortens the path of the viral infection, but then you're exposed to the virus and you get it again, right? But if you could treat a snake that has nidovirus and then it not be re-exposed to nidovirus, well, then you could really have something there.
Yeah, and I mean, viral diseases that's why I have a job, that's like job security, because they are difficult to treat, because they're intracellular. I mean, they're using your body to make more of themselves, and so to fight that, you're almost having to fight your own body in some ways. And so the trick is to balance, walk that knife's edge of fighting the virus, but not damaging your body, not having toxicity, but having efficacy against the virus. And you can find, antivirals all day long that work work in cell culture, but then you try to treat them in a person or in an animal model or something, and they just don't work, or once you get them to humans, they work kind of not the best, but but then again, we've developed cures for things like hepatitis C and things, different serious viruses like that, life-threatening viruses. So there is hope that we can do that. The challenge is these are snakes, and people don't care about veterinary treatment of snakes for the most part, other than a few dedicated individuals. So I'm hoping that these preliminary studies that we've done will move on, and we can see evidence that they might work in a living system. But that work needs to be done, and it's costly like anything. And the more advanced systems you get, you move from cell culture to an animal model, it's tenfold more money to do that.
Costly and time consuming.
Exactly.
I can only imagine.
And we don't really have the facilities to do snake infection models. Unfortunately, we might be able to do that, but it would be a substantial amount of money to go about that. I think maybe somebody like I'm trying to remember. We published a paper just a couple of years ago reporting these results, and I'm happy to make that that paper available to anybody that's interested in reading it. It's called In Vitro Characterization and Antiviral Susceptibility of Ophidian Serpentoviruses. And it was, the first author is Stephen Tillis. And the person that I'm trying to think of is Dr. Osibov, who's out at University of Florida, I believe. And he's been doing a lot of different he's in Gainesville, University of Florida, and he does a lot of different reptile studies. So he might be the best lab to move that forward. I'm hoping that might be the case, but we're happy to supply him with some drug if it will help.
We need to get Elon Musk interested in reptiles as well,
right? Yeah, we need that.
Yeah, sure we do.
Yeah, it's too bad Evan Wexler isn't around anymore. He might be willing.
All right, who wants to go next with their wrap-up topic, Bill or Marshall?
I'll go because mine's a quick one. So you're not keeping green tree pythons now, but if you had the space and just the fairy came along and gave you the exact housing that you would want to keep it in, what would be your favorite locality, or what would you? I'm assuming you'd like a locality animal.
Yeah, definitely. I if I could get them, I'd love the Australian locality. I love that, white vertebral stripe. And that was the reason I went with Marukis, because they have that, white stripe of the scales. And I dig that look a lot. Otherwise, I like the, Azuria that have the blue diamonds, that look. That's probably my second favorite look. But either of those I'd be over the moon,
We all know what Marshall's saying. He took my question. I already
No, I got a different question.
All right.
Talked a lot about your Australia travels. Where else have you been looking for herps?
Oh, so with the pandemic, I've been all over the U.S. lately. So I've got up to, with Carpet Fest, we had an extra week or so of herping in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, that area. So that was kind of cool. I saw my life for copperhead and timber rattlesnake. We've done a few trips down to West Texas, Southern Arizona, which is probably my favorite herping there, or Utah. I love Utah herping as well. We did a couple trips in Utah over the last couple of years. We walked down the north rim of the Grand Canyon to find a Grand Canyon rattlesnake down on the bottom. And then we hiked back out all, overnight. Basically, we didn't really sleep that night, and then moved on to Las Vegas to find another lifer rattlesnake. So it was a fun trip. But I've been to Southeast Asia, to Singapore, and did a little herping there. Actually, on the Singapore Zoo grounds, I found a clouded monitor, a couple of them, a couple flying lizards, some black spitting cobras. I did a little bit over in Ghana. That was more of a trip to visit my parents who were over there for a couple of years, but didn't see many herps on that trip, unfortunately.
I've been to Liberia for a couple of summers. So
cool.
I know that territory. Not much to see there.
Oh, New Zealand was a great spot. They have lots of cool geckos over there, although they're very difficult to find. I was able to find one species in pretty big abundance. It was actually in the land of Rohan. So if you're a Lord of the Rings geek, where that was filmed is where those geckos lived. It was pretty cool. But
ever find any flying chondros?
not yet. Just the normal crawly ones.
Oh man. Hey, listen, 2 hours went by too quick, Justin. This was an amazing podcast. We'd love to have you come back. I mean, obviously, I don't think 2 hours was enough. I mean, you obviously are a wealth of knowledge, and truly your passion for reptiles showed on tonight's show. So what do you have to say to, we just had shy of 70 people tapped in tonight. So what do you have to say to all the love and support we had on tonight's show?
Yeah, I mean, you've built a really nice army of followers, and it's
Thanks,
great
man.
to see. You've had some amazing guests, so I'm really honored to come on and chat with you. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I know you're more of a kind of a private, laid back guy. You don't have a reptile page or anything where people can kind of see your collection, or is everything just off your private page?
No, I've got a website. It's not updated too often, but it's AustralianAddiction.com. Australian Addiction Reptiles is my business name that I've had since '97. So it's been around.
No TikTok though. No TikTok.
I do have a YouTube page where I put up shorts every week. JG Julander on YouTube.
There you go. JG Julander.
JG Julander on Instagram. I pretty much just post pictures of wild reptiles or birds or whatever nature on Instagram. I don't really post much other than that. And then, so I'm not the best salesman. I don't really get the stuff I've produced and work with in captivity out there too well. So I'm too busy herping and posting pictures of that stuff. But I do have a few things that I produced this year. I kind of had a crappy year with, I only got Antaresia eggs hatched this year. All my Aspidites eggs kicked off, all my carpet eggs. I missed a couple clutches because I was out herping, so I felt kind of bad about that. But hopefully next year will go better. I'm looking to have some womas and blackheads and inland carpets and stuff. So
well, definitely, I'll put all those links in the description below so people can go to your website and check out what you have going on YouTube. But can't wait to have you back, man. But guys, do me a favor, it's a wrap. Give it up for Justin Julander, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thank
Great,
you.
great chatting.
We'll talk again soon. I'm hopefully looking forward to meet you someday as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Take care, Justin. Cheers.
All right, see you guys.
Peace.
See ya.
All right. Dr. Siegel, Dr. Juarez has his next experiment ready to go. Do you want to hear it?
I can't wait to hear it.
Of course. Patrick Holmes, if you're okay with this. I think we should get Patrick Holmes to drink a nido positive chondro water dish.
Yeah.
Okay.
See if we can get him infected.
See if he's positive, and
Yeah.
if he is, put him through one yoga workout on his driveway on a hot day, and let's see if he can get rid of it off of Patrick Holmes' workout.
Yeah, we'll have to hold him down and swab him.
I think he likes that. No, awesome episode. I mean, Justin, man, what a guy. I gotta say, laid back, but had some cool stories and a lot of powerful information. You weren't wrong, Bill.
Yeah, he's knowledgeable, and humble and well spoken. What's not to like, right?
Yeah. So and overall, Marshall, what do you think of tonight's show?
I mean, he's got not only the wealth of knowledge from keeping snakes in captivity, but also the natural history side and actually seeing them in the wild. So his perspective on everything is pretty interesting.
Yeah. And Bill, I mean, overall, were you satisfied with tonight's show?
I knew it was going to be a good one. I've seen him on other podcasts. I've spoken to him, so I knew it's going to be great.
At the end of the day, guys, it's not what you know, it's who you know. We know Justin, and I think what we can do is, and I think we already kind of pre-gamed this, but Justin Julander, Terry Phillips collaboration podcast, we got to figure it out, dude. If he wants him on the show, I want him on the show. We need to figure this out and come together. You know what I mean?
Maybe you can get Colette Sutherland to come on, and then we'll just have the Mount Rushmore show. We'll call it the Mount Rushmore show.
If we pull that show off, we could quit.
Just
Seriously.
just mic drop it.
Yeah, that's it. And sponsorships could pay off for the next few years. We'll be good. No, but honestly, I love it. Great episode tonight. I appreciate it. Thanks for tapping in as always, Marshall. And wait, Marshall, are you gonna be here next week, or do you not know yet?
I'm not sure yet. It just depends. I don't know when my daughter's got her first flag football game, so we'll see what I'm not sure exactly what time it is yet. Hopefully I can be back here, but I'll let you know the next day or two.
Yeah, calm down, Alex Warren. Just relax, okay? I'll let you know. I'll let you know. If Mark's not going to be there, we'll let you know.
But Marshall Mendez is going to be in Dallas on September 6th.
I am.
That's confirmed?
Yeah.
Wow. Wait, wait, is that new? I feel like that is new information.
Oh, it's like I was saying earlier. You never pay attention when I post stuff.
It's relatively new.
Certain people ruffle my mornings sometimes, if you know what I mean, okay? And then I kind of get distracted, all right? No, but guys, I love you guys. I appreciate you so much. Red Mountain Herps on Instagram. Do not miss this guy on IG. And, of course, the mayor, Phoenix Reptiles. Give it up for these two. It's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night. See you next week. Thank you so much.
See you next week.
Peace. Appreciate you guys for tapping in on such an awesome, legendary episode. Justin Julander, right? Definitely going to have a round 2 with this guy for sure. Impactful. I love it. All right. If you enjoyed tonight's episode like I did, and you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps me. It motivates me because I'm all about the organic growth, and I've been organically growing this network for going on 5 years now, all right? That's why it's the coolest reptile network in the world. By the way, I didn't give myself that name. The viewers did, and I ran with it. So 5 years running. Don't hate. I'm just saying, if you're looking for exclusive content, make sure you go down, first link description below, join the Trap Talk Patreon family, exclusive content, Discord that's popping 24/7, over 200 awesome reptile keepers, Instagram group chat. Good way to market yourself, man, especially if you got some heat. Just don't sleep on yourself. Join the Trap Talk Patreon family. Patreon members, you guys are my heart. I love you guys. You can also check all tonight's sponsors. Links in the description below, so please go support them. Let them know that the Trap sent you. And that's a wrap. Don't forget, tomorrow, Cush's Corner every Wednesday. All right? Talking about not missing. Stephen Cush, not missing. Cush's Corner's on fire. All right? You want to talk about other popular, not worked with? That doesn't make sense, does it? I'm just saying, the more rare side of keeping snakes, this is going to be your episode, okay? Episode 24 tomorrow on Cush's Corner. Don't miss it, all right? And again, what a great episode. Episode 531 in the books, Justin Julander. I'll check you here next time, and I'm out. Cheers.